Start. Uh, Good afternoon to all of you. We are discussing about the theories of organic evolution. In the last class, if my memory goes right, we have discussed about Darwin and Wallace. We have not discussed anything about their principle or what is their theory, which helps us in understanding the evolution. But what we have made is we have tried to understand what made them to propose this theory of natural selection. This is also known as Darwin-Wallace concept, or more popularly known as natural selection, and sometimes it is only called as Darwinism. Though Wallace has contributed equally to the development of this theory, Darwin was having more aristocratic background in England, so he got highlighted. Most of the time we call it as Darwinism, though it is actually Darwin-Wallace concept or theory of natural selection. So now we will try to understand what exactly meant by this theory of natural selection. So this theory of natural selection is based on three observations and two deductions. One is what the Malthus has suggested: organisms reproduce in a geometrical ratio. But now we know that organisms do not reproduce in a geometrical ratio, but it's an exponential ratio. Then another observation by the Malthus only, any the number of any given species tend to remain more or less constant through time. But remember, we know that now sometimes they for example, if you take our own human population, what was our population in 1947 and what is our population today? Then the third one is observation or deduction, we can say that. That's a universal struggle for survival. This is mainly because there will be more hungry mouths than the food that we can supply. These are some of the deductions and observations. Now, what is Darwin's grand contribution? Darwin and Wallace, when I told. What is his contribution to this theory of natural selection? He has 4 points to explain in the very beginning. Later, he has added two more. Altogether, it becomes six. He said that some individuals are more successful at reproducing than others. Suppose if there's a population having, for our understanding, let's say that that population has 1,000 individuals in the population. Do you think all the 1,000 individuals produce same number of offsprings? Some may produce maximum number of, few may produce maximum number of offspring. Some may produce a moderate number. Some may not produce at all. Some may be sterile also. So that's why it is perfectly right to say that some individuals in a population are more successful in reproducing. So as a result of which we will have more number of offsprings than the other. What is the advantage implication we will discuss later. He also suggested that in any population, advantageous characteristics becomes numerous. Less favorable characters disappear. Again, he was influenced by Lamar, use and disuse to a certain extent. Advantageous character. What do you mean by advantageous character? The character which makes them more fit to live in this environment. Like the one which can get the food more easily, or which can win the battle when there is a struggle. Such characteristics they become numerous, whereas the less favorable characters, the characters which are not that much advantage, they will disappear. This is the second observation. He also observed that natural selection, in the process of natural selection, one species transmutate or transform into another species. Probably here it requires a lot of explanation, which I will take up later, not now. Now let's just try to understand his contribution. Natural selection operates continuously and helps in transforming or transmutating one species into a new species. And he also said that the evolution is a natural process. Evolution is a natural process, and that would produce new species. As a result of evolution, we will get more and more new species. This is what the Darwin's observations is. Now, I'll come to this slide later. Okay. Darwin's first observation was overproduction because he was influenced by Malthus. He said that and he observed that all living beings have the tendency to produce more and more offspring. ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಹಲೋ, ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಹೌದು ಸರ್.
ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿ. So then, okay, all species wants to produce more and more offspring. Most species think whether if they produce those many number of individuals, whether all of them will survive, whether they can get the food, meat. This is a different for them. Even if you take the fishes, where they lays millions and millions of eggs, probably if all these eggs survive in the water, there is no place left for other organisms. Same is true in case of the land also. Even if you consider the slowest breeder, that the elephants, if you allow them, even these elephants, one pair of elephant in their lifetime can produce thousands of offspring. In the sense, This is a very organisms will lead to overproduction, and this as a result will create lot of problems in future. This is what we understand now. But Darwin didn't think about it. Then, when there are more and more offsprings are produced, all will not be of the same time. Whatever the offsprings, each individual has a unique combination of inherited traits. Now we know that it is because of the genetic diversity. Even the twins, they have different traits, characters. So when the offsprings are produced, they will have, all of them will not be uniform because they will have different genetic makeup and different genetic combination. So here I have given you a photograph of some bugs where each bug is having some variation to show. They have all come from the same parents. Even today we know that we have differences between the brothers, sisters, and everywhere. So this is because of the genetic variation what we thought today. But at that time he was not knowing. That's a genetic variation. He simply said it's the variation. But he observed one thing. Though there are many variations, all variation need not be favorable. Out of this number of variation, one or two variations may be having some better value, better survival value by developing or by having more advantageous features, advantageous character. So that's why the Darwin suggested that in any population, variation becomes a very important. This is a well established fact also. When there's a variation, each one will have differences with their characteristics. Some may be having more advantageous characteristics, some may be having less advantageous characteristics. See, this is the variation. This is the one gastropod. See, in the shells, though they belong to the same species, you can see the pattern, size, colors. That's a variation. So now, if this much variation, even if I ask you to pick up one out of it, you become selective. You may select this, or somebody may select this. So that's the advantage. The advantage, the one that is being selected is more having more advantageous character. That's what Darwin has suggested. Now, the third observation is competition. When there's an overproduction, variation will be there, but there will be competition. He called it a struggle for existence. Competition is nothing but the struggle for existence. Because the resources are limited. Either it may be food, water, space, or the mate. There will be struggle. Why the struggle? It is for the very survival of the individual. There will be struggle. In the struggle, there will be competition. Probably, if the resources are plenty, then the struggle may be of limited choice. But if the resources are less scarce, there will be more intense struggle or competition. So here, in this struggle, can be more intense, especially among the members of the same species. Intraspecific competition will be because the members of the same species means their requirements are also same. They need same type of food, same amount of water, same space, and even they will fight for their mates. This competition among the members of the same species is more intense. Sometimes the competition may be between the members of two different species also. Suppose if they are sharing the same ecosystem, then also the competition will be there. But generally speaking, the competition will be of less intense compared to the intraspecific competition. Interspecific competition will be of less intense. Then what will happen in the competition? The survival of the fittest. Who will survive? The fittest organisms will survive. Many times when we talk about the fitness, we talk about the muscular strength. It is not the muscular strength only. Fitness refers to ability to survive and reproduce. The organism which has some advantageous character because there's a lot of variation. All are not same. Within this variation, some may be more useful characteristics. And the organism with more useful characteristics have better fitness. It has more ability to survive and reproduce. So that is what we call the survival of the fittest. So that's the reason why all individuals do not survive up to adulthood. Because surviving up to adulthood is very important because they have to reproduce. If they die even before reproducing, that's a mere waste because they cannot leave their legacy for the future. So that's why, though millions of eggs are laid by the fishes, only few survive. Who survives? Only the one which has better fitness, which has better advantageous character. Because all of them are, all individuals are not same. They have variation. This variation decides the fitness. Some of the variations may be more fittest, some may be less fittest. More advantageous and some may be less advantageous. In that case, the one which is having the maximum fitness value will survive. So simply surviving is not important. They should survive and reproduce. For this, what they should do is first they should be able to reach their adulthood. Then they can struggle to get the mate. Getting the mate is also not easy in the animal and plant world. Mate, they should find the mate and reproduce. Hmm? They should reproduce fertile offspring. That's also there. The offspring that they produce should be fertile also. So that is the result of competition. The chances of winning this competition depends on the fitness is nothing but the ability to survive and reproduce. Then actually here that comes the selection, what is known as natural selection. The individuals with best traits, adaptation will survive and they have the opportunity to pass on straight to the offspring. This is the central dogma of Darwin Wallace concept. What are best traits? To understand the best trait, I should give you some information. If you look into this universe or this nature, there are so many organisms which are surviving. And we also know that not many organisms have become extinct. Why these organisms are survived? Why many of them have become extinct? We can say 101 reasons for the extinction of so many organisms, including the our grand old dinosaurs. But if you put it in one word, nature has a selective process. Any organism which can adapt to the nature, they will survive. The organisms which fail to adapt to the nature, they will perish. This is the rule of the nature. What does it mean? Nature is a dynamic, not constant. Nature will is always fluid, it is dynamic and it changes. When there's a change, fluidity in the nature, the organisms which are living in that nature should also show this dynamic nature, fluidity. Along with the nature, they should also change. What does it mean? To survive in this nature, the organisms should show adaptations to the nature. The organisms which are adapted to the nature will survive, and those which fail to adapt or adjust to the nature, nature will mercilessly discard them from them. So that's why the organisms which also changed along with the nature survived even today. The one which failed to adjust, adapt to the nature, they have perished forever. This is the rule. So that's why if you want to say what is the cause for extinction of the dinosaur, in one word you can say that they failed to adjust or adapt to the nature, which is dynamic. Okay. Naturally, an individual is said to have a best trait, provided that trait is having more adaptive value. A trait or a character is said, if you want to say it's the best or best trait or character, only when it has the highest degree of adaptation. By virtue of this best trait, if an organism is able to adjust itself with the dynamic mode of this nature, then that organism will survive. The one which is not having this best trait, they cannot survive. A trait can need not be only one character. Traits, characters, a host of characters are required for the very survival of any organism. Only when they survive and reach the adulthood, they have the opportunity to pass on their characters, or at least this trait to their offspring. And there is no guarantee also an organism will be able to pass this best trait to the future generation. But there's a chance. There's a chance to pass this trait to the next generation. Any organism which cannot reach the adulthood and reproduce, whatever the taste that it has is lost from the entire gene pool. Gene pool was not the term used by Darwin. I am using it today. So now that means these best traits are selected, are very selective. Who selects it? Nature selects. Nature decides it. Okay, this is the best trait because by virtue of this trait, this organism is better adapted to. So that's why it is known as natural selection. It's a phenomenon. A trait can be phenotype or genotype. Phenotype means physical appearance. Though Darwin said that at that time, it is a phenotype, physical appearance, because at that time Darwin was ignorant of the genetics. Now we know that natural selection acts not only on the physical appearance, even on the genetic makeup, because genetic makeup is going to express, genotype is going to express in the phenotype or physical expression. It is a selection. To give one example, an organism may be brightly colored. It may look very beautiful for us, but there is no guarantee that nature will select that one, because if that bright color makes the prey, that organism, more vulnerable to predator, because predators, if the predators can identify that individual very easily, then the survival value of that characteristic feature is very very low. Predators will find those organisms having this trait or variation, and they will eat on them. So as a result, these organisms will not have a chance to pass their character or the trait to the next generation, to the offspring. So that's why physical appearance or muscular strength need not be the fitness fittest characters. To put it in one word, I can say that any character which is more adaptive to the nature, which increases the survival value of the individual, we can call it as the fittest character, and those characters are selected by the nature. So that's why it is called as natural selection. See, this is the photograph. There are so many beetles. Some are green and some are orange color, saffron color. So a bird may be easily, a blue color may be easily caught by that. Then this blue color is not a fittest character. The fittest character will be this orange color. Who will decide which color is favorable? It is the nature. So that is what is known as, in nutshell, the natural selection. So as a generation later, what happens? See, in the first generation, only three orange beetles, but in the next generation, their number will be more and green beetles will be less. And in the third, and a day may come when only this orange colored beetles may be there, this green colored beetles may be totally wiped out. See, green beetles have been selected against and brown beetles have flourished. These saffron colored beetles are flourished. Over a long period of time, this natural selection results in the changes in inherited characteristics of a population. What do you mean by this? Natural selection is a force which is acting continuously. 24 into 7, this natural selection force will act. As a result of continuous selection, generations after generation. And now we have understood that nature will select those traits or characters which has more adaptive value, and those traits or characters are the most fittest characters. If we go on filtering these characters over a period, generations after generation, a new population, a new characters will be inherited because these changes will increase the species. Again, going back to the long neck of a giraffe, if the nature went on selecting the giraffes which are having longer neck, as a result of that, what has happened? Only the giraffes with long neck could survive because long neck is a fittest value. It has more adaptive value with the nature. Then it also increases the fitness, survival value of that one. As a result, after nth generation, earlier there may be all short neck. Later they started stretching and all those things. Probably this was selected by the nature. And after nth generation, you can see only the giraffe with long neck because only this giraffe could survive and pass these characteristics to their offspring. Why they could survive and pass the characteristics? They have a special with more fitness, survival. This is the core principle of natural selection. See here, there are those things, the chromosome with gene. For example, if there's a beetle or there's a pest, say that. These are the pests, agriculture pests, and when you spray the pesticide, this was one particular pest which was having a different genetic combination, as you see here, which has resistance against a particular pesticide that is sprayed. Now, what happens when the pesticides are sprayed? All other pests will die, but only this because having a better genetic makeup which shows resistance to this pesticide to survive. So that means only this pest can reproduce and pass this trait or character to the next generation or to the next offspring. As a result, what we'll have is the next generation pest will have all same this type of genetic makeup. This type of genetic makeup, no, they will not survive. They have perished forever. And only in the last generation, because this is the selection of the nature. When this pesticide was sprayed, all other died, but this could survive because of its better genetic makeup. And that pest is decided, or that beetle was selected by the nature. Darwin also suggested that if you trace back to any organism, you will see common descent with modification. Today, what we see is these two birds, but there was a common ancestor for all of them, and over a period of time, they changed, and survived and presented in this form and shape. All these things have become extinct, not only become extinct, but they have given rise to ultimately a new form or the organism with some better fitness or better trait. So, even if you talk about the evolutionary time scale, evolution is a continuous process. In this time scale, what's important is there are so many events, either they create a new species or eliminate a species. How they can create a new species? By selecting the better and better characters. Suppose if there is no scope for selection for the nature, they will eliminate the species. If the species are not having better adaptive value, survival value, they have perished. But the one which are having some advantageous characters or better characters, they are survived but presented in a different form, what we call the species. See, evolutionary time scale over only 5 of the 10 plants leave the offspring. See, these are the plants. How many of them? Only 5 can leave the offsprings. And only 2 of the 10 plants leave the offsprings. So then what has happened after generations? See, all will be like this. So this is the central dogma. Of course, it needs again the explanation. It is not, but there are many other scientists who try to question the Darwin's observation. Especially one particular scientist, Ernst Mayr. It is a later period, not when the Darwin proposed that. Now we are standing in the 21st century and thinking about the Darwin. But when Darwin proposed this, this was the marvelous piece of explanation as far as the evolution is concerned. He suggested, Ernst Mayr questioned all those things. That I will discuss that later, not now, because this is not the right time. So this we will skip. So Darwin observation, there will be evolution like that, leaving the uh, one which are having more favorable characteristics, more adaptive value, they will survive, whereas the others which are not having will perish forever. So this is the reason why the Galapagos Island is having different types of finches. The finches beaks were evolved as per their food habit and the food that is made available there. Based on the food available there, they have to make changes in the bills because nature selected the one which is the best one. Even that's the reason for the Galapagos Island change in the uh, shells as well as the food modification. So all these things Darwin proposed after coming back to home, not when he was in the Galapagos Island, because here he suggested that separate species may have arose from original ancestors, but all of them are having a common ancestor. So even his idea was sharpened and honed by James Hutton, who proposed the theory of geological change. That is, he suggested that force change the Earth's surface in shape. Changes are slow. Even he suggested that Earth much older than thousands of years or millions of years. Then Darwin came to the that all these changes must have taken millions of years to change. When Charles Lyell suggested that geological or the Earth's geology has changed over a long period of time. When Earth can change, why not the life? Along with the Earth, life also must have changed. This was all influences that the Darwin got in order to Darwin and both Wallace in order to propose theory of natural selection. Even the Lamarck's idea that is the tendency towards perfection, use and disuse, inheritance of acquired traits, all those ideas influenced Darwin. And based on all these ideas, there's the another scientist too, Thomas Malthus of 19th century, which I have already told you. And both of them together, that is the Russell Wallace, he wrote an essay summarizing the evolutionary change from his fieldwork in Malaysia and uh, all those things helped Darwin to publish his book, The Origin of Species by Natural Selection. See, difference, even artificial selection was also, even during that time also there was artificial selection because there were shepherds, there were selection for the horses. They want to get it from a good breed. But people were not knowing what is this good breed, why it is called as good breed, and all those things. So artificial selection also helped him. So ultimately, the elephants. See, even his elephant was like this initial days. See, and how the present day elephants are there. All these things are because of from the woolly mammoths to this one. So the six main points: natural selection does not grant organisms what they need, but what is need is we don't have any control, but it is the nature which has the control. Again, to summarize, one is the overproduction, second one is the competition, third one is the variation, then the adaptations, that is the struggle for existence, then ultimately the natural selection, and natural selection leads to what is known as the speciation. Speciation is nothing but the form over the generation, favorable adaptations which may be cumulative. Bad characters will disappear, only good characters will proceed, and that leads to the formation of a new species, and that is known as speciation. So this is what uh, the hallmark of this theory of natural selection, and uh, not many things have added to it later. So for the day we will stop here, but in the next class we will discuss where Darwin went wrong, and then so many other future developments which has helped us in understanding this evolution also, uh, we will discuss in the next class. So any questions, anything? ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ?
ಹೌದು ಸರ್.
ಓಕೆ, ಮತ್ತೇನು ಕೇಳೋದಿದೆಯಾ, ಹೇಳೋದಿದೆಯಾ? ಇವತ್ತು ಸಂಜೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೋಟ್ಸ್ ಕಳಿಸ್ತೇನೆ ನಿಮಗೆ, ಎವಲ್ಯೂಷನರಿ ಥಿಯರಿ
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್.
ಇವತ್ತು ಅಥವಾ ನಾಳೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತೇನೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ನಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪ್ರಿಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್, ಪ್ರಿಂಟರ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಎನಿ ಡೌಟ್ಸ್?
ನೋ ಸರ್.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಫಾರ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೇಟಿಂಗ್.